I think many may value the answers I have to this reader's question. Bob writes, I'm interested in buying a Jeep for backcountry use. A new JK Wrangler is out of my budget. In forums, the XJ Cherokee, Grand Cherokee, and Wrangler each have loyal followers. In your opinion, what Jeep works best for moderate trails and daily driver use? The easiest way to answer this question is by breaking out each of the vehicle types individually. And I'll begin with the Wrangler. The Wrangler began in 1987, and the first Wranglers through 1995 have leaf spring suspension, the inline 6-cylinder engine or an inline 4-cylinder engine, and a pretty solid powertrain and axle setup. The big distinction with the early Wrangler through 1995 models is whether you have EFI on the 6-cylinder engine. If you want to avoid having to retrofit EFI or change from carburation to EFI, you need to be looking at the 1991 to 1995 Wrangler. Some would say that the Lincoln coil suspension on the TJ Wrangler, which was introduced in 1997, is superior to the YJ Wrangler's leaf springs. The leaf springs carry forward a tradition from the CJ era, but have the advantage of being longer leaves, wider leaves, and really handle a lot better than the earlier CJ models. On the other hand, Lincoln coil suspension was a major improvement, and for those who are looking for ride quality, good axle articulation, and wheel travel, the 1997 to 2006 TJ Wrangler is worth a close look. If you're considering a 1997 to 2006 TJ Wrangler, one of the best values overall would be a 2003 to 2006 TJ Wrangler Rubicon model that comes with a 4-to-1 reduction in low range, has the 44 rear axle and front axle, has air lockers front and rear. Things that you often would buy in the aftermarket are already in place on the 2003 to 2006 TJ Wrangler Rubicon models. Since Bob mentions the JK Wrangler, current model being model year 2013, with the Pentastar engine, the A580 automatic transmission option, and a lot of upgrades that took place in 2012 and carry into 2013 models. If that is out of budget, Bob, consider the 2007 to 2011 models with this caveat. The 2007 to 2011 models have the 3.8 liter V6, which some find underpowered for the heavy weight status of both the 2-door and 4-door versions of the JK Wrangler, which can be over 2 tons in the 2-door version and closer to 5,000 pounds going over the road in the 4-door versions. Again, if you're looking at a JK Wrangler, a good value would be the Rubicon edition if you can find one at the right price. It has all of the features I described in the TJ Wrangler Rubicon model, meaning the low-range 4-to-1 ratio rock track transfer case, Dana 44 axles front and rear, lockers, etc. When distinguishing between the JK Wrangler and the earlier YJ and TJ Wranglers, the JK Wrangler has a longer wheelbase even in the 2-door version. It's 99 inches long in the 2-door version and 116-inch wheelbase in the 4-door version. 116 inches, to put it in perspective, was traditionally considered a half-ton pickup truck wheelbase length. Also, the JK Wrangler has a wider track width, which is actually an asset in terms of vehicle stability and in terms of directional stability if you should go to oversized tires. Oversized tires are mentioned because the JK Wrangler is an absolute candidate for oversized tires. Many, on the other hand, would find a TJ Wrangler Rubicon suitable for moderate trail use and daily driver use in a 31-inch diameter tire. 33-inch diameter tires would be a minimum for a JK Wrangler, especially the 4-door model. And it's not uncommon to see JK Wranglers going over trails like the Rubicon with 37-inch plus size tires. Unless you're planning on oversized tires, a rule of thumb is oversized tires means a change in gear ratios at the front and rear axle and other calibrations and changes that need to take place in order to compensate for the oversized tires. Throughout the magazine, you'll find information on the trickle-down effects of oversized tires and what you need to do to correct for the oversized tires that you may put on a YJ Wrangler, TJ Wrangler, JK Wrangler, Cherokee, Grand Cherokee, any of those models. Back to the JK Wrangler for a moment. The 2007 to 2011 models in the used market can be good values. Understand that the 3.8 liter engine is a V6 of lesser horsepower output and torque than the new Pentastar 3.6 liter engine, which really has more than adequate power for a JK Wrangler. Many owners find 2007 to 2011 model JK Wranglers are suitable candidates for a V8 transplant, in which case consider the costs of doing a V8 transplant and whether your chosen transplant engine will be emission legal and so forth. I've covered that subject succinctly. The Advanced Adapters HD video series goes into detail about emission-compliant Wrangler V8 conversions. For tight and twisty off-road conditions like the Rubicon Trail, the rule of thumb has always been the shorter the wheelbase, the better. On the highway, however, the longer wheelbases lend themselves to directional stability and make models like the JK Wrangler, the XJ Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee attractive. If you're considering an XJ Cherokee, there are a variety of reasons why people are attracted to that model. The XJ Cherokee and even Grand Cherokee models have become popular. As they get older, they're more affordable. In fact, the price of admission is so reasonable for older XJ Cherokee and Grand Cherokee models that many find it a place to start. In the case of the XJ Cherokee, and we have one in our vehicle fleet for the magazine, any size tire beyond stock will require some degree of lift kit. Our particular model has a 6-inch long arm lift, which is covered in the magazine thoroughly, and that 6-inch long arm lift entitles us to put 33-inch diameter tires on the truck without any clearance problems with the wheel wells, axle articulation, and so forth. In fact, we're using the original equipment fender flares with the particular wheels and tires of our choice. The XJ Cherokee has an optimal wheelbase length for directional stability on the highway and reasonable off-highway performance. In fact, the transfer case on an XJ Cherokee is tucked up into the body, and you'll actually find that the breakover angle on an XJ Cherokee is superior in most cases to the shorter 94-inch wheelbase TJ Wrangler or YJ Wrangler that has a low-hanging skid plate below the transfer case. The overall utility of an XJ Cherokee with a lifting hatch in the back, front and rear seating that is easily accessible, most of these models are 4 doors, makes this model ideal for a family with a couple of kids. The powertrain options and axles are similar to the TJ and YJ Wrangler. You have the 4-liter engine from 1987 up on the Cherokee. I would suggest avoiding a 1984 to 86 XJ Cherokee unless you are anticipating an engine swap. 1987 up. Fuel injection is common on all 4-liter engines from 1991 forward. The fuel injection system is a Mopar MPI, which may have some assets over the earlier Renix system. These vehicles are known to go 250 to 300,000 miles, which makes them attractive as an initial purchase even with 100,000 plus miles on the odometer. A well taken care of XJ Cherokee will easily go to 250 plus thousand miles. The Grand Cherokee would fall into this category too, although I caution, I would not consider getting a Grand Cherokee beyond the 2004 model. And the optimal Grand Cherokee, in my view, is the 1999 to 2004 WJ series. This gives you beam axles front and rear, gives you a state-of-the-art powertrain, including a V8 option, the 4.7 liter V8, a high-tech engine, or the 4-liter standard inline 6-cylinder engine. And that has been an overlooked vehicle until recently because the price of admission was higher with the 1999 up model. Now that the 1999 to 2004 models are more affordable, I would project that that will be a very popular version to be upgraded, modified, and used as a daily driver combination, light trail to moderate trail use vehicle. And this might be something that Bob would find suitable. The earlier Grand Cherokee from 1992 to 1998 also has assets. A V8 option, 5.2, and even the 5.9 liter are traditional pushrod V8s that actually make a lot of torque. I would caution that the 5.2 and 5.9 liter engines require a lot of attention around the cooling systems. That engine is virtually shoehorned into a 1993 to 1998 ZJ Grand Cherokee. As a rule of thumb, any used vehicle that has a lot of accessorization, upgrade, luxury, accessories, and so forth is going to cost more in the long run to maintain. And this would apply to the Grand Cherokee model. The Cherokee tends to be more utilitarian, and of course, the Wranglers are a utility 4x4 model. While air conditioning is certainly an asset, especially on a hardtop vehicle where you can fully benefit from it and even pressurize the cabin to keep dust out of it, air conditioning and accessories like air conditioning create heating and ventilation system complexity that can add up in cost, especially on later model Grand Cherokees. The JK Wrangler also is more complex to work on than a TJ Wrangler or a YJ Wrangler or even an XJ Cherokee. So if you do your own work, understand that the JK Wrangler and the Grand Cherokee would require more attention and more complexity in service procedures, should you need to work on the heating, air conditioning, ventilation system, or anything like that. This has been a quick overview of the models that I've described, and I trust that this gives Bob some direction. We can go into more detail, furnish me with questions about modifications to these vehicles, and I'd be glad to discuss the shortfalls and assets of the various models for lift kits, locking axles, and so forth. Send me your questions to Q&A@4wdmechanics.com.